give my opinion on it of what is better, Android or Apple. And what I say, Android. Of course it's Android. I mean, come on. It has to be Android, but we're going to get into that in just a moment. Sourced. So, to help understand what that is a little bit better, if you do not know what that is, open source means anybody can go in and make contributions to it, and then it's reviewed by many, many people, and they basically collaborate on it to make what is good, and then they double check each other to make sure nothing is bad. It works really well. A lot of softwares are this way. A lot of softwares aren't this way also, like Windows, for example. It's pretty much closed. You pay for it, and Windows programmers work on it, and then they are pretty much the god of that product. If something is totally broke, you have to call them and ask them kindly, why isn't this working? So the same thing is Apple. Apple is very closed source, just like Windows, for example. If their software has an issue, it is totally up to their developers to fix that issue and push out an update. Where Android, not so much the case. It's open source, and it just makes things work. And if there's a problem, people can go and try to tackle that problem, and updates can happen very quickly because such a large number of people can work on it, and it's a big group project. And I mean, you can just see why it would be better in those regards. Where Apple, not so many people can work on it. It's restricted to the Apple Corporation and what they can do. Now, here's where Android starts getting limitations on that, is when, you have Samsung, for example. They're a large Android seller. It has to work on that particular device, which can add a little bit of gray area to it, but it still isn't as bad as Apple in terms of the ability for people to work on something and get it resolved quickly. With that being said and out of the way, that's kind of the technical mumbo jumbo about why I think Android is better. Other reasons Android is better, it just goes on and on in my head, but let's look at the iPhone for a second. Let's just take a step here and let's examine this iPhone thing that's sitting here on the right. I believe that's a 10. I have to set those up at work all the time. It's not all that fun. Speaking of setups, here's one thing that really gets me going on why Apple is absolutely terrible when it comes to setting up a new phone. So on a Samsung device or any Android device, because you can install the app on any Android device and make it work. I'm not sure how well it goes if you go from like LG to LG. I think it would work just fine though, because you just grab the app. It shouldn't really care. But anyway, from Samsung to Samsung for sure anyway. I know you can do like LG to Samsung and Motorola to Samsung. It works. I've never tested like LG to LG, but I would assume it would work. It's called Samsung Smart Switch. That's the short of it and what I'm getting at. Samsung Smart Switch, it is so nice. Like, it gives you so many different options. You can transfer via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. So like, you got your old Android phone. It's been a couple 2 to probably 4 years. I don't know how often people get phones, but somewhere usually in about that time range, assuming that they don't break and whatnot. But yeah, so you open up this app and you say, okay, set up new phone. You have it on the new phone. You open it up. You put in a code and approve it or whatever. And all the data from your old phone goes entirely over to your new phone. It pulls in accounts, everything, apps. It just works. Yeah, it takes a little bit of time, but you just click it and it just pulls everything. It's just done. It's done over the Wi-Fi. It's done over the Bluetooth. All your contacts, everything. It just works. I mean, yeah, you're going to have to sign into your Google account, your Samsung account, or whatever account your Android device requires, but, that's not so bad. It just makes moving data so easy. Now here, on the other hand, the iPhone. Oh boy. So you're getting a new iPhone? Oh man. Have you ever heard of iCloud? Most people's answer is yeah. Do you use it? Well, I would say it's probably about 50-50. So 50% of people, yeah, I use it, but it's out of space. or no, I know what it is, but I don't have it set up because I don't want it. I just never took the time. Okay, so now we can't restore iCloud data to your phone unless we get a recent backup on your own phone and get it synced up to Apple servers, which is a big dang headache when they've never done it before. And then if they got so much stuff and then their iCloud's too full and then they can't utilize it and it's a mess. And then Apple wants you to pay for extra space and they don't want to pay. And oh, yeah, it's a mess. Okay, so the next free option. Well, the next free option is iTunes. You plug in the old phone into iTunes, and you create an on-site online or like a local backup of the whole phone. Okay, that's fine, cool. It does it. Takes a little bit. It's done. All right, plug in the new phone. You say you're setting it up. You say restore from iTunes backup. You plug it in, you say, okay, here's the file that I backed up to, and okay, now we're going to go ahead and, oh, no, we're not restoring it. You're running iOS 11.2 whatever, and this phone has 12.0. We cannot use this backup. Sorry, try again. Seriously? Okay, so now you got to go to the old phone, update it. I just will update them all, make sure they're all on the correct iOS. All right, now they are. Now back up the old phone. Now try again, and it's 2 hours later. The customer's mad, and you can't do anything about it because Apple is got you right where they want you. It just don't work that great. There's that rant out of the way of why Apple does not do a good job. But you know, in those terms, Android kills it. iPhone, no, they don't. It's a nightmare. In an ideal world, if somebody has their iCloud backup up to date and it works, yeah, sure, that's fine. But that is not the case, ladies and gentlemen. People do not keep their stuff up to date. So yeah. Anyway, moving on from that big discrepancy that I see between the two phones. The one thing I can say that Apple does do well is their phone is a lot simpler in terms of use. Like it's not, it kind of protects people from themselves is what I would say. It's a little bit harder sometimes to really mess up an iPhone because it's so limited. You don't have the features that you do on Android. You don't have the control that you do with an Android. The Apple iPhone lets you do what it wants you to do. It doesn't think outside the box. It controls you. You don't control it. Pretty much is one way of looking at it. It is very limited in what you can do with it in terms of control. With that being said, it's clear that's another reason why Android wins in my book, because I like having control over things and being able to really drill down into what's going on and saying that, hey, I want you to do this. Apple, no, you can't do that because we don't let you do that. You're going to have to do what we tell you can do. Now, with all that, keep that in mind. I mean, the iPhone is a good cell phone in terms of it works, it functions, don't get me wrong. One thing, I guess, with all phones, and maybe it wasn't so much the case at one time, but nowadays the price of phones is totally ran away with itself, Android or Apple. It's getting ridiculous. What's an iPhone now? $1,400. I mean, come on. And then in 6 to 8 months, it'll only be worth maybe 6, 8. I think that's getting a little bit ridiculous, but they know that they can get it because people go out and buy it. And then, Apple has a huge fan base, so people are going to buy it. I get that their phones do work, but they have lack of features, and the way that it does things, I personally do not care for. One area that Apple does win, hands down, is if you like downloaded music on your phone. The iTunes app, from everything that I've ever used, in recent years, I should say, unless we go way back in time, but we're not going to. In recent years, the iTunes platform does music very well. You can't get away from that. They just do that well. They've got that cornered in that regards. Now, let's look at it in a modern day perspective. How many people actually, it's not like the LimeWire days where you went out and, got an album off the internet and we're putting it on your iPod and everything because there wasn't online streaming services conveniently available like Spotify and Pandora and things like that. Um, in those regards, I think Apple's market's getting narrower in iTunes because everybody's gone to Pandora and Spotify and all these other different sites. Um, I don't think people download the music like they used to. They just put on their streaming site, and a lot of people are willing to pay for these products, and they work well. And I don't think that it's just a flat rate. They pay $150 a year or whatever it is. I don't know. I don't keep track of that, but and then you have all the music that you want, and you can look up songs that you want, listen to new songs, and it's all on your subscription, and you don't have to worry about it. I think a lot of people like that, and I think that's hurting Apple's market on having music on your phone and being able to do it that way, in my opinion. Um, I don't know the actual marketing things on it, but that's just how it is. So, yeah, that's one thing you could kind of argue, but at the same time, it's kind of going away in my head. So you can take that for what it is. Like I said, this is why I think it is based on what I know and how I feel about things. So let's get to the main key point that I've kind of been beating around and kind of hitting on at the same time here is features. At the end of the day, Android wins with features. Hands down, features, features, features. You see that right there, ladies and gentlemen? That is a SIM card. That is something that Apple has done away with. So, you know, you cannot put one of those in an iPhone and have greater storage capacity of your phone. That is a huge deal for a lot of people I know, and it's nice to them because they can put everything on that SIM card and it's separate from the phone, sorta, and it's kind of a backup in a way. It's not going to die as easy as the phone might be able to die per se. That laying on top of it is the SIM card, of course. iPhones still have that. All cell phones have to have a SIM card. That's just how it is with cell phones. But yeah, that is a huge, huge deal when it comes to features. Another thing that you can't really see in this picture that most Androids still have, maybe not all of them do anymore, I know that they're talking that Samsung is going to get rid of it also, is the headphone jack. Yes, you cannot, on a modern iPhone, the headphone jack is totally gone. So good riddance to that. If you want an iPhone, it is probably going to go away on Android. It's a shame. It really is a shame, but it is what it is. You just adapt and move on. With Bluetooth and everything these days, I see why they want to get rid of it and the issues that it can cause with having it, waterproofing and whatnot. But yeah, it is a pretty big feature that a lot of people enjoy. Applications, you can go. There's so many more apps for Android. It is insane. Like, it is nuts compared to like iPhone capabilities. I mean, it is crazy. I mean, you can jailbreak an Apple, you can but you can run an Android just as well. So yeah, the features hands down, and hardware wise, nowadays Apple and like Samsung, they have pretty similar hardware specs. They get after each other for minor discrepancies, but there was a chart that I had once upon a time. I'll have to dig that up maybe. But it's just crazy where Android wins and Apple falls short. I mean, Android's had wireless charging since, like, I know my Note 4, you had the capacity to wireless charge that thing. And that thing was back in, came out in 2014. That's like 5 years ago. Apple's only had wireless charging, a couple years now? Maybe a little longer, I'm not sure. But they're so late to the game on so many things. I mean, they're just behind the times. Now, when you start talking about security aspects of these phones, it might be a little bit easier. One drawback of the Android, some people say it's easier to hack. I mean, yes and no on that one. I mean, if you have an up-to-date Android operating system, I don't think it's going to be that easy. The only reason the Apple is so hard to hack is because, well, they keep everything so private within themselves, and but I mean, hey, they're not unhackable. Like they said, their iPhone could not be hacked, and then all that one crazy mumbo jumbo happened with the FBI, and they got into it without Apple. So, yeah. Um, I know that Android is easily encrypted. My phone's encrypted, and I know you can do it on an Apple too, but it doesn't seem as clear cut as it does on an Android. Um, Android and Apple both have the features of like find your phone and whatnot. Kind of depends on your Android, but if you don't have it through like Samsung, you can get a third party app and it'll work just as good. I mean, you can control an Android and like you feel like you own what it's doing, where with an Apple, it controls you. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And I like Android better. It's just it works. They're usually cheaper phones. Sometimes, not all the time, but I mean you can get them cheaper and they'll work. I would be careful with how cheap you go because there are some out there that aren't very good. Um, the one thing that I guess Apple has going for it is consistency. Their stuff does work pretty well, but also you can't really tell a whole lot from in terms of like what's going on the inside from an iPhone 7, from an iPhone 8. I mean it pretty much looks the same because their iOS is so similar. Like it never really changes too much across devices as far as I know. Um, but yeah, let me know what everybody thinks about this. But I am sworn by Android, and I'm probably gonna make the Apple people mad. But you know what? I'm not. I prefer Android for these reasons solely. iPhones work. They're a phone. They've been around a long time. They're established. They're not going away. Yes, they are a usable, working, good phone. But I think Android has the edge. That's what I'm getting at. Over the whole, in my life, in my opinion, based on what I've told you here, Android has the edge. Thank you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You all have a wonderful, wonderful day.